This is our second trip around the Horn from Buenos Aires to Santiago, Chile. We did this about 15 years ago, but at that time didn't go to Iguazu Falls. Our hotel had a great view of St. Martin Falls and allowed us immediate access to all the trails. We had breakfast and then headed off to two of the three major trails. We had it mostly to ourselves because the tourists hadn't arrived at the park yet. We started on the upper trail. The main river splits into numerous portions which meander to the basalt cliffs, providing these many falls. They have a lot of variety in how they reach the lower river. Some are just tiny ribbons of water, others are numerous falls. After heading back through the rainforest, we caught a train to the head of the next trail. The crowds had arrived, lots of people on this trail. Here we walked almost a half a mile across the river to get a view of Devil's Throat. In the afternoon, I took the lower trail. Here you could see the bases of the various falls. I recognized many of the classic pictures of Iguazu Falls, which were taken from this trail. Then I discovered you could see almost the entire trail without having to take any stairs. Along with the falls, we also had nature to observe: butterflies, birds, and various animals. Back in Buenos Aires, I walked from the hotel to the central city. First stop was the bookstore, a former theater. Then a tour of the Cologne Opera House. They completed renovations in 2010, restoring its look of 1910. In the afternoon, we did a 3-hour private walking tour of the Recoleta neighborhood, starting at the cemetery. Most of the Argentina's historic figures are buried here in family tombs. Evita Perón is buried there in the Duarte family tomb. After the cemetery, we walked the neighborhood, viewing the European-style architecture. We did a tour of the Tigre River. Here people live on the islands of the Delta. The housing is highly varied, from really nice to some simple houses, and everything's boated in. That evening, we sailed to Montevideo, Uruguay. Last time, we didn't find the city particularly interesting. I went to the plaza, Independence Plaza, and then to the Gaucho Museum. Everything was explained in Spanish, but what was displayed was pretty obvious. We sailed to Puerto Madryn on the Argentine coast. This desert was once lush and home to the largest dinosaurs ever discovered. We continued to Portumbo. Here the penguins build their nests under bushes or in holes to be sheltered from the sun. The penguins generally go back to the same nest they had last year, which allows a male to find the same female year after year unless another penguin has stolen the nest. There are over 210,000 nests here, or about 800,000 penguins. After the eggs are laid, the male and female alternate at keeping the eggs warm. They have a patch between their legs without feathers to pass their body heat to the eggs. An interesting factoid: the adults can't recognize their chicks. They recognize the nest and come back to feed the chicks that are in the nest. Usually at least one adult stays with the nest, while the other gathers food. But some of the nests are a 2 to 3 hour walk to the sea. The British established Port Stanley in 1845. It specialized in repairs for boats traveling through the Straits of Magellan. The town's landmark is the 125-year-old Christ Church Cathedral with a whalebone arch in front. We took a four-wheel drive to the Gentoo penguin colony and saw one king penguin among the colonies, sort of sitting like a monarch above the others. We watched them for about an hour.
You want me to pick this up?
Periodically, several penguins would get into a fight and chase each other around the colony. On the way back, we saw upland geese and a large flock of southern great petrels. We had a lecture on Shackleton's journey to cross the Antarctic on foot, but disaster struck when their ship became trapped in the pack ice. The ice carried them away from shore, and the ship was eventually crushed by the ice. The crew escaped by camping on the sea ice until it disintegrated. Then, before the ice pack melted, they sailed the lifeboats to Elephant Island. A small team took the James Caird and sailed 720 miles to the inhabited island of South Georgia, then returned to rescue the remaining men. Besides the lectures, we had other activities on the ship, including our margarita every night, usually with our friends Sonny and Andy. And of course, there was the entertainment, either by the shows, or the skits, or the tango. We also had a lecture on Magellan's journey, the first around the world. He left with 5 ships and 260 men, but died on the trip, and only one ship and 18 men completed the journey. They returned with 381 sacks of clothes, which made the trip profitable for the king. We sailed around Cape Horn. The weather was moderate, so we had time to take lots of pictures of this southernmost point of the continent. Here is the southernmost lighthouse and weather station. Last time we were here, pictures were difficult because of the 6-meter swells, strong winds, and rain. Ushuaia, the end of the world, has the mountains of Tierra del Fuego surrounding it on 3 sides, creating a picturesque scene. We did a scenic cruise in the Beagle Channel, primarily to spot the wildlife. Our first island was a large colony of blue-eyed cormorants. Though they look like black and white penguins from a distance. They lay 3 eggs in November, which hatch in December. On another island, we had South American sea lions. The alpha males were very evident, being about twice the size of the females, with a large mane, similar to lions. They can dive up to 50 meters deep. The guide warned us not to worry if we saw red on them. They eat so much king crab that their excrement turns red. We continued our journey through the Beagle Channel, named after the HMS Beagle, upon which Charles Darwin served as the botanist. The Beagle Channel is below Tierra del Fuego, while the Magellan Strait is above the island. On to Chile. Punta Arenas is the southernmost city on the mainland and is just off the Strait of Magellan. The geography here is confusing. We're in Chile, but the city faces east. We started at the Salation Museum, which had displays on the region, and then went to lunch on a sheep station. They have 7,000 sheep, a small station. After lunch, we had a demonstration of sheep shearing. The shearer maintains control of the sheep by keeping it off balance. He sheared the sheep in about 5 minutes, yielding about $20 worth of wool. We then headed to Fort Boldness, the southernmost point of the mainland, and the place where Chile claimed this part of Patagonia in 1843.
This is the end of the Andes, and then across the strait we have Desolation Island.
Next day, we were disappointed at our stop near Amalia Glacier. Quite a contrast from our 2004 trip near Pius XI Glacier and the Continental Divide, only 7 miles from the ship. Puerto Montt is in the Lake District of Chile. Osorno volcano dominates the skyline, but it is Calbuco volcano that erupted 3 times in April 2015, covering the area with ash. Our last lecture started at Lascaux Cave in France, painted by hunters over 19,000 years ago. Recently, we learned that the dots and stars in these paintings mark the time when animals migrated to the area, mated, and gave birth. These hunters were more sophisticated than we thought. Then he shared findings about the Gnostic Gospels. These Gospels seem to have many passages that don't make sense, but they do make sense if you take terms like God and heaven to mean hunter-gatherer, and bad terms like man and earth to mean farmers. The hunters are talking about all the knowledge that farmers don't have, and that this knowledge should be kept secret from them. On our last day, we had a tour from the ship to the airport. Our first stop was wine samples at the Vinavar Winery. Then we stopped at a ranch for food, dancing, and a horse show. It takes about 7 to 8 years to train a horse to do his steps.
Gabriel will also say goodbye to you. And finally Hector and Ladino.
The view of Santiago, Chile. Andes in the background.